Everybody, welcome to the Backstage Pastor, where I have my good friends, Mike and Carly Friesen. And Carly is wearing a purple shirt, and Mike is wearing...
It's not purple.
It's purple, Carly.
It's blue.
And Mike is wearing a blue shirt. Mike, what color is her shirt?
It's blue.
Look on the camera, people. That is purple.
The camera lies.
Although Mike's is kind of green, actually.
Nope. It's blue.
No, it's not.
Okay, everybody, this is my friends Mike and Carly, where Carly has a purple shirt and Mike has a green shirt.
Sure.
And Jimmy needs to go to the eye doctor.
Okay, you know something funny? I think I might, actually. Because we were golfing this morning, Vadim and I have a pink tee, bright pink. And I hit my driver incredibly well, I will add. And I could not find the pink tees for the life of me. And they kept landing like 2-3 feet away. And in the brown short grass, it just pink blended in with the brown grass. And I could not believe it. I actually had the thought, what is happening with my eyes? So when you say I might need an eye doctor because of my shirt.
My shirt is actually blue. It's kind of
You know what, people?
Bright, but...
Put it in the comments. What color is Carly's shirt? We all know it is purple. Okay, we will not digress already anymore. This is my friend Mike Friesen, who is my senior by 5 years.
You're 34.
I'm 34.
Then I'm 39.
Oh my goodness. Almost 40.
A little bit of salt.
Do you realize if you do 40 again, you're 80?
I know.
Are you okay with that?
You're super good at math, too.
Are you okay with that, though?
Yeah.
I don't know if I am. I had the thought the other day. If I do 35 again, I'm 70.
I know how
That's wild.
Productive and fruitful my next 40 can be because of the previous 40.
Yeah.
Why don't you just
like,
be
I feel like we're
grateful
just
for
hitting
every
stride.
day?
We're just hitting stride.
But it went by so fast. Like, it went by way too fast. Like, don't you ever just look back on pictures and you're just like, man, I was just 12. I remember that with my siblings.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like, I'm halfway home. Well, Mike's halfway home. Carly, you and I are halfway home yet.
Yeah, we'll see.
Carly's younger than me. No, you're older.
No, I'm older than you.
36.
Yeah, 37 this year.
So we're going to call him the youth pastor because a senior wouldn't really be fitting.
Yo.
The senior youth pastor.
Here's what I would love to do with you guys on the pod today. And I've prepped you guys a little bit. And I know you've probably just poured over the questions that I gave you hour after hour.
Yeah.
And really dug deep into those questions.
Yeah.
We've talked about this so many times. And like, it just comes natural. So it's fine.
You guys are inspiring to me. Do you want to know why?
Yep.
Here's why. Because from my perspective, and there's a handful of people that I know close to me that are in this boat, that from my perspective, and I don't want to put words in your guys' mouths, went from cultural Christian, and I hope that's not offensive to you guys.
No. Makes
Good.
sense.
Because I'm going to keep saying it.
Okay.
But went from cultural Christian, where you went to church on Sunday. Help me out here. What were other things? What was your other mindsets? You kind of try and read the Bible once in a while.
Yeah, I went to Christian university.
Right. Trying to find a Christian girl.
Which I did.
You
not
did?
at the university.
But not at the university. But
you found
while
her down,
I was
down
at
south.
university.
Right.
Down south, yeah.
We're going to get into that. But there's a handful of people that I know that like went from, cultural Christianity to like with kids still, not like as a teenager or, a young adult where it's like the Lord's just kind of, passive in your life, to like inspiring on fire, Holy Ghost fire, hellfire and brimstone preaching. I'm trying to get words. Not hellfire and brimstone.
Just the true living the true gospel.
Lifestyle Christianity.
Full gospel.
Yeah.
Fire. Yeah.
And not passive about it. Not like right. You guys show it on your faces. You have like, there's so much joy of the Lord in your faces. There's so much passion and desire. When we had 2 services, you guys came to both services.
Probably like at least 90% of the time.
But honestly, just so like hungry for the Lord, hungry for his word, not necessarily perfect. You guys would probably say, but actually just like so on fire for the Lord. And that is so inspiring. And so I want to dig into what the heck happened, what shifted, and what can our listener do to experience something similar? Because I think and I know we all have different seasons, right? Highs and lows and mountains and valleys, more passive where it's like, I just, am not necessarily loving the word and I'm finding it hard to get in the word or finding it hard to talk to the Lord. And then there's other seasons where it's like, I'm loving the word, can't get enough. Can't get enough talking with JC. But I would love for you guys to really pour into our listeners and me and share your secrets.
I don't know if it's a secret because I don't really want people repeating it.
No.
Yeah. But secrets too, being passionate about the Lord when you're as old as 40.
He's not 40 yet.
Almost 40.
Just turned 39.
So let's start not at the beginning. Like let's not start with your ancestry or whatever. But what was it like? Like what was your marriage like? What was your parenting like? What was your relationship with the Lord like?
Pre 5 years ago.
Yeah, I was gonna say what do you say pre 5 years ago?
Yeah, I would say pre 5.
2019
for him,
and earlier.
That. For you, that would be that.
Yeah.
What was happening? What did it look like? What did your marriage look like? And by the way, I know you guys have like shared with me, pretty vulnerable about your marriage and stuff. As vulnerable as you want to be, I'm down with. And I think if you think it would help somebody, I would love for you to share it. This is the Backstage Pastor where we can talk about these things and there's time for it as well. Who were you guys?
Go ahead.
Pre 5 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, I would say we basically, it probably was about 10 years ago that actually we found ourselves in a more desperate place. I was just really beaten down by motherhood.
Right.
And then he was dealing with his own stuff. And so it was like, I felt like I was all alone. And so I got in a desperate place and I just, my health was suffering as well. And so I just started crying out to the Lord and like, I need things to change. And then one day.
1 second. When you say motherhood, desperation, what was happening in
well, like
motherhood?
we had the two girls and this is part. This is part of our story. He's very involved now, but he was dealing with his own stuff, and so he was not really present, like with the girls or with me. Mike. And so so I just did. It was like I was up all night. I was doing all the things, right? And then just we had this tension between us where it was just we got to a point where we didn't even like each other at all. Like
when was this?
Probably it would have been 2013 kind of thing.
10 years ago?
Yeah.
9 years ago, somewhere in there.
2013. So I guess it's like more like 12 years ago or something.
What does that mean? You didn't like each other? Explain the pain. I want.
Well, to be honest, I was
how heavy was this?
Yeah, to be honest, I was so hurt that I had built up so much bitterness inside that I just I would picture strangling him or punching him in the face. Like that sounds so horrible, but I was just so angry. I was so angry, and really it was just the torment between us, two broken people not dealing with anything. For any root stuff. And so then...
Were you bringing people in?
Well, we tried to a little bit.
Tony.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I brought Tony in a bit for sure.
Yeah. And I did have some other people. They weren't actually from this church actually, but I had some other people in the Christian community here that were helping me. But I basically got to a point where I got on down on my knees because I wanted him to change so bad. And even though he would probably say...
From your perspective there, what was wrong with him? What needed to change? Like, just in raw honesty.
It was actually like, I mean, there was a lot of his own like fears. I know he'll speak into his own stuff too, but there were a lot of like fears there, fear and anxiety. And so coming home, he was stressed with work already and trying to provide. And so then he'd come home and then he'd be like anxious about everything else. And I was doing my best all day, right? But then didn't meet his standards or whatever. And then I would get defensive. So I would attack back because I felt, attacked and so on, right? Like that. And so, basically that was that, but I wanted him to change. Like, he was really passive on the things that mattered, like being involved in the girls' lives and making me feel safe or whatever, stuff like that. And so
spiritual leader.
Right. And so I thought, okay, he needs to change, God. And then one day I just broke down on my knees in our room and I realized I had so much bitterness built up in my heart. And so I was doing nothing good for him. It didn't matter how much I prayed because I was praying in bitterness, anger. Like, I was praying in that. And so it wasn't effective at all. And so God wanted to deal with my heart. Even if it started somewhere else, it doesn't actually matter. So I had to take responsibility for where my heart was at. And so I got down on my knees and like, I actually had back spasms for 1.5 years at that point. Like, I could barely lift. It was like a steel rod. I could barely lift Olivia as a baby. And as soon as I stopped, I like surrendered bitterness and just forgave him. And then my back like started releasing, and it still was a process, but I actually, one of the big things too was that I actually asked the Lord, help me see him through your eyes.
You started praying that?
Yeah.
This is 10 years ago.
Yeah. 12, something like that. Yeah. So that was kind of for me where it started. So I started to just really walk in close relationship with the Lord because I'd found myself in such a desperate place. Like, I physically was in so much pain for a few years and trying to walk that out too. And so it just kind of awakened me to that. But
I wouldn't normally do this, but I know you guys fairly well and know you're fine with this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
But in your marriage, things were quite dire.
Yeah.
Like you kind of skimmed over, like it was rough and he was not satisfied, but like you were, I think, Mike, you'd mentioned before, you guys are making plans to be separated.
I was.
No, I didn't know. I would have freaked out even more if I would have known that. Probably.
Like, you're like, this is not working.
So like during that particular period, and I was, like I was not in a good place. I was chasing perfectionism. I was trying to keep a business afloat and all this stuff. Like, I just had a one-track mind, and I was like, okay, I just need to keep food on the table.
Right.
Doesn't matter what else happens. I got to keep, clothes on the kids. I got to keep the heat on. I got to keep food on the table. Right. And so it was just like nothing else took priority. And it wasn't that I didn't love her, but I was loving her in the way that I knew how.
Right.
And that was providing. It wasn't being romantic. It wasn't being present. It wasn't getting up in the night and changing diapers or doing anything. It was, I need to sleep because I got to work because I got to provide. That was my one-track mind.
Right.
And so...
And you're like, why don't you see this?
Yeah,
I'm
so
feeding you guys.
When I didn't...
Yeah.
When I felt like I wasn't receiving any gratitude, so instead of me looking at it and seeing that she's basically running the home while I'm providing, quote, I just felt like, I wanted the wife that was, when I got home from work, she was in her high heels and her apron greeting me at the door and filling me with kisses, right? Like,
and high heels. It had to be high heels.
Well, okay, I'm painting a picture here of like what I would consider high expectation, right? Yeah. And
there's fresh cookies,
yeah,
and fresh
and
sourdough
suppers
bread
on the stove and whatever.
I mean, I have baked a lot, so.
Oh yeah, she's an amazing cook. But the problem is that I chose to look over all of that, and because I wasn't receiving what I thought was gratitude for what I was doing for the family, that started building resentment and bitterness in me. And then so between the two of us, and then during that time, I know there was some childhood stuff that was surfacing for her, and there was stuff that I didn't deal with. And so it was just a like jumble ball of hell. It was like, you know, when people are like, oh man, it's just a living hell.
Yeah.
It's like, that's what I felt like. I felt like I was living in hell, but I was on earth. Mm-hmm. There was no love. There was no respect. There was no love. There was no respect. And it was just this vicious cycle. And like, you know, I remember coming home and the greeting I got was, how was your day?
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, hey. Right? Because she was just reciprocating bitterness that, you know, I wasn't at home present with the kids.
I don't even remember that. I've blocked out. I actually don't have a lot of memories from a lot of those years.
Crazy.
So it was just we were at each other's throats.
Yeah.
And it just, for me, in my mental state, it was just like, okay, the only glue here is the kids. There's nothing else here but the kids. And so we were both reaching a breaking point.
Right.
And this is where I'll just speak a little bit into the fact that I now have a much fuller understanding of who I am prophetically.
Yeah.
Because as a kid and stuff, I would get prophetic dreams. I would see angels. I would see demons. I would see these things, and I just thought I was super weird. I wouldn't talk to anybody about it.
And you, for context, you grew up in a Mennonite home, Mennonite background.
Yeah.
Pretty like, that's not
super
normal.
Conservative, right? We never talked about the prophetic. We never talked about the demonic or the angelic for that reason. But anyways, pertaining to this situation where it was kind of just coming to a climactic either eruptional blow up or you know, it was going to be just one way or the other. I had a dream, and because Carly, she was so stressed out, she had eczema all over her arms.
Crazy. Like it was attacking your body. Lower back pain.
100%.
Oh yeah. Like my arms were covered in just bleeding and
so
and nothing, medication didn't take it away. It was just intense, like stress, like on my body, right? And
so I had a dream.
You had all the kids, by the way, all four?
No, just the two girls.
Just the two girls.
Two girls. Yeah. And that was a whole nother thing happening.
Well, meanwhile, the girls are like experiencing trauma every day with the conflict going on, because it wasn't quiet in our rooms or anything like that.
And you're trying to have more kids still at this point?
And all the miscarriages.
How many miscarriages?
7 total.
That's wild.
I think we were on number 3 at that point. I think we had 3 by that point.
Yeah. So in the middle of all this, that is also happening.
Right. And that was huge.
Which we weren't healing from either. Like there was not really like a grieving healing process there. On. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I had a dream, and she was just scratching her eczema, and she started bleeding to death. And I was like yelling at her to stop. Yeah. And she wouldn't stop. She just kept scratching right through the blood. I mean, if you want to get vulnerable here. And she woke me up because I was screaming so loud in my sleep.
Wow.
And she's like, what is going on with you? And I just broke. It was a broke point where I was like, oh my goodness, we've let ourselves get to this hell.
Yeah.
Where it was like I was dreaming hell. Right? Like my wife was like killing herself in my dream. And I'm like, holy crap. Like this is crazy. And still not really understanding the demonic and just attacks and just stuff. But it was just a breaking point.
Yeah.
And then I just remember us staying up for the rest of the night. And then it wasn't like we resolved anything that night, but it got all put on the table. Like her stuff, my stuff, we just aired all the laundry. but we put it in front of us and we stopped putting it between us. So it was like it
you
was
guys are like confessing stuff and confessing sin, like just
and just like frustrations, anger points, pain points, hurt points, all those points. And it wasn't just a pile of laundry; it was a mountain. But then we had to decide: okay, are we going to tackle this mountain together, or are we pretty much done?
Did that conversation that night when you were like put all that on the table, that could go two ways? Right? Yeah. Like that could you
could look at it going, yeah, I can't tackle this.
Yes. And then, but also in that conversation, it could be pointing the finger the whole time. Like, well, you did this and this is, did it feel like that conversation you were on a team?
No, that conversation. And I think the Lord's grace was really on that because that's when I can remember both of us for however long that I could think back. We were both humble in that conversation.
Right.
We both
almost teamship.
Yeah. There was no pointing fingers. It was, I'm going to express exactly what's going on for me.
Impossible.
She expressed exactly what was going on for her. And there was zero judgment. It was like, okay, this is what's happening for you. This is what's happening for me. What are we going to do with this? And that was the hill upwards. And
this is 10 years ago, 8 years ago.
And there's a lot of brokenness for me. Like she accelerated in her spiritual walk and healing way faster than I did. And for our listeners, if you don't think there's power in prayer, our testimony is without a doubt one of the most powerful testimonies of the power of prayer, because from that point on, she probably spent 2 to 3 years.
It was 5.
Okay. 5 years praying for a heart change for me before it actually started happening. It wasn't like, oh, it's not happening in 3 weeks, I guess it didn't work.
Right.
It was like a persistent perseverance for 5 years.
So at that point, that was kind of like, we recognize the pit that we are in. Here's how I'm hurt. Here's how you're hurt. And then that was like the start of the journey. But it's not like all of a sudden, Mike, you're like in the Word, spending time with Jesus, like raising your children to walk in the fear of the Lord.
But I did know that dream, like,
woke you up.
Like God got my attention. Mm-hmm. He just was basically, now that I'm really thinking about it, was just like, for me, it was like, Mike, you're killing your wife.
Wow.
Right. And then like God can speak firmly. Right.
Yeah.
And so
he's a good father, but man, he can be firm.
And so that was super, like, I knew I had a long mountain to climb myself, but I kept, as she was praying for me and as my heart was slowly changing, and I think I did make some small changes over those 5 years, but it was just like this, and then it started to climb, right? But I kept going back to that dream, going, okay, there's a reason I had that dream. There's a reason I had that dream.
Yeah.
And that almost propelled me forward to go, okay, I don't want to have that dream again. So I need to go a different direction. Do you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like I knew how. It wasn't like the Lord spoke a whole bunch more things. It was, I kept coming back to that, not going back to the living hell.
Right.
So the only way away from that hell was to change what was happening in the present.
Right. But would you say, Mike, like, it wasn't necessarily that you started thriving. It's just that you kind of started managing things a bit better.
Yeah. Yeah, that's 100%.
Some time management, you were a little more present. Like, you just didn't want to get to that level of pain.
Yeah.
Okay, so she starts praying for you guys.
Well,
yep.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is that we didn't, it didn't work when we would try and talk about things. Like, just like later. So honestly, I know this is unconventional for people, but it wasn't like sure, we would talk about things sometimes, but it wasn't like we sat down and we're like, okay, we're going to work through this issue, or it wasn't even working on communication. It wasn't, honestly, it wasn't, because it was so deep that didn't matter. Because if you have such deep rooted spiritual stuff going on, you can try communication as much as you want, but it's not going to work, because you're not dealing
resolution.
Yeah. And you're not going to be dealing. There's a place for communicating better, which is what we feel that we are learning together now, because we're in a healthy place.
Interesting, but get that order right.
Yes, you have to.
You need to be set free.
You have to because otherwise it's exhausting.
Wow.
It's exhausting if you're not dealing with the root stuff. And so I fully believe that when you're seeking after God, you're letting him change your heart, renew your mind, and just seeking after the Lord wholeheartedly, that from that he absolutely will heal relationships in your life, whether it's husband and wife or with your kids or whatever he does. And so that was the thing, is I had to get out of my way before I could even start actually praying for him. And then even in that 5-year process, it's not like I had arrived and I was just, perfect. Yeah. No, not at all. There were so many times when I prayed selfish prayers, so many times in those years too. Right. Because I was still in this pity party victim mentality. Like, look at me. I have to deal with this husband.
Answer my prayer, God. Yeah.
Yeah. But
okay. So you start praying, Car, and for Mike. It's not as hellish as it was. You guys are managing better.
Yeah.
You have several more miscarriages over the next couple years.
Yeah, and then we probably had Nathan before you had a big shift, right?
Yeah, and then we had another miscarriage. And then we had Matthew.
Well, we had 2 in there. It doesn't matter where they are.
And then done here with that's crazy.
Yeah, we're done
4
now,
plus 7.
I know.
Children.
Heaven will be a lovely reunion.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that'll be crazy.
I know.
Getting to meet all them.
Yeah,
that'll be crazy.
That'll be crazy. Okay, so you're managing better now, and I want to get to, because I remember I've been at Evangel almost 11 years, pastoring here, married for almost 10 and a half. And I remember just random conversations, like we'd kind of run into each other. I remember you were renting an air toy, and we kind of had a conversation there. You guys are so different now. Like, you're so different now. What started happening, Mike, for you? And Carly, you jump in kind of along the timeline, like what was happening for you guys in your marriage, with your spiritual life. I would love to talk a bit of Africa. I know you've shared that as a pivotal point without getting into like tons of detail time-wise, but
for sure.
What happened?
Well, before that, the men's.
Yeah,
that really
so
was the shift.
I would say, man, this was so recent. It's almost embarrassing sometimes, but
no, it's not.
Isn't that
because
true?
Because God bends time. He really does. He totally, I can't explain that, but I just get it. It's like time is different for him than for us. So the amount of time he's been on fire for the Lord, whatever, God makes up for that. Like,
but I get what he's saying. It's like,
I know.
You want to be like, 27 years ago versus 4 years ago.
Yeah. So, 2021, that was a pivotal year. So in the fall of 2021, I wrecked my knee on the shop floor and blew my meniscus. And this will lead into something, but
didn't you fall from like a 50-foot cliff and it just shattered or something?
Wasn't it kneeling on a shop floor and I got up?
That's not cool.
It must have been hanging on by a thread.
Yeah.
From
this was the knee I had injured in football in high school, so I'm sure there was still something going on there. So during that time, I kind of felt like a bum on the couch, and so this was in November and December of that 2021 year, and Carly had been bugging me to go to this one's men's group for a while, and I'm like, not my crowd.
Yeah,
this is COVID.
This is kind of
they're a bunch of like super Jesus lovers. There's men that hug all the time. Not really my style.
They're awesome.
And so, but I knew a lot of the guys that went there, like not like knew them well, but they were kind of acquaintances. Yeah. And so finally I was like, you know what? Sure.
Okay, 1 second pause. What was your spiritual life like? Were you spending time with the Lord? Yeah. Were you leading your children and leading your wife?
No, not really. Like I was probably reading the word a little bit more. And I think that slowly climbed after we were getting out of like the pit of hell.
Right.
But it was more like I was doing things like I was enjoying church more.
Right. You were plugged in.
Yeah. And I really enjoyed and always listening to worship music,
Yeah.
play my guitar. So I think there's things like the Lord was bringing fruit into my heart through those things, just slowly. Like,
Yeah.
and I was slowing the pace, not him, obviously.
Yeah.
But it was kind of just one of this afterthought of like, sure, I'll go because it'll please her. I'll go check this out. I probably won't enjoy it, and I don't have to go back because I told her I went, right?
Yeah.
And so I was driving there, and like the whole time, the devil was just like, you're going to get there. They're going to make so much fun of you. They're going to be like, oh, look who finally decided to show up. And was just like planting these seeds of
because they'd invited you so many times.
Yeah. And I was always busy, right?
Yeah.
Even though I
watching
probably
Oilers.
wasn't. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Well, if it was Oilers, then I'd have an excuse. But
It wasn't even the Oilers.
Let's not talk Oilers, but that was an amazing game last night.
Yeah.
I'll just say that, and we'll move on.
And so I was going to turn around a couple of times because I'm like, this is so stupid. Like, why am I I feel like I'm just being forced to go.
Wow.
And then I was like, okay, I'll go.
I haven't heard this.
So I got there.
But I also was not nagging you at this point. I had learned that a nagging wife is not very effective.
Right.
So
No,
I would
that's true.
present.
Well, Proverbs says it's like a dripping faucet.
So I've learned how to present an idea and then leave it and then present it again maybe. And then he comes up with these amazing ideas, and it was what I was saying all along.
And you just keep your mouth shut. You're like,
I'm like,
Oh,
yeah,
good idea,
great
hon."
idea, hon.
so you show up.
So I show up, and like, it was like the first time I can legit remember
Yeah.
feeling like an intense presence of God.
Whoa. This is at somebody's home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just like, it was the embrace of those men of just like, oh man, wow, I'm so glad you came. Like, it was literally that
Sincere.
simple. But because of all the doubt that whole way there of I preconceived exactly what they were going to say, and it was the total opposite. That's what made it such a big deal, because I had already gone over the conversation in my head, a dozen times.
Right.
And then I get there, and yep, they were huggers, but it was like, and you didn't get away with hugging one guy. You had to go through the gauntlet. And I was like basically right on time, almost late. And so all the guys were there already that normally go. So there was like a dozen guys that I had to go through and
you probably
hug
interrupted.
everybody.
They'd already started.
No, they hadn't started, but it was like,
This is like the hippie movement.
it was
with Jesus
really hard
people.
for me. It was really hard for me. Like, the first hug felt super gross. Honestly, it was like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. And by the time I got to like the 12th guy, I was like, I was just
Melting.
a puddle of goop.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then we watched a teaching on the Lord's Prayer. Like, this guy just
Can I guess who?
dissected.
Was it Dan Muller?
No,
Oh.
it was
But
Torben
they were,
Sondergaard.
yeah, lots of his stuff.
Yeah.
So good.
But it was
He's
just
amazing.
like,
Amazing.
it was just like this like truth preaching. It was like everything that happened that night with the truth, like the word. Like,
Was
you know how
for
in
you.
the scriptures it says it's like a sword, right? It pierces. It was like everything that happened that night strategically pierced different areas of my heart. And I came back, I was like, the only thing I could think of was like, man, I can't wait to go next week.
Wow.
Like, it was that drastic of a change for me.
and
then-
Carly's like, told you so.
Oh, great idea, hon. That's what she said.
Yeah. I
And then I
probably
met,
tried to keep my
and then
mouth
a
shut.
few weeks later, I met Pastor Lowe from South Africa at the
Because he
Hobbs.
went there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, he was doing the little 3-night crusade thing at the Hob shop.
Shh, don't tell.
Th-
It was during COVID.
COVID's in the past.
Whatever.
Okay,
I'm just kidding.
this is recent. That
Yeah,
seems like
it
just a
is.
couple weeks ago.
No, I
Wow.
know
2
this.
years
And
ago.
so after that, it leveled me up, so to speak. Like, I started going weekly to the men's thing, which
Yeah.
got me more into the word. It got me more teachings during the week than just going to church.
Hungry.
Yeah, it started building this hunger, and I started finding my identity in Christ. Like, I started realizing some of the gifts I had and pressing into those things more, which helped me like grab the word and understand the word better.
Yeah.
Like, I just, I love teaching. I'm a teacher.
Yeah.
And so one of the ways the Lord showed me to like grab a hold of the word was just to write sermons, like pick a topic and then write a sermon, or like read this parable and write a sermon on it.
Wow.
But it made me go deeper. It made me cross-reference things in the word, and it really started getting the word in me.
Yeah.
Because Lo always preached, whatever the treasure in the heart, right? Like whatever you fill your storehouse with is going to come out. Is going to come out.
Yeah.
And I realized that there was nothing in there but cobwebs.
Wow.
Right? Or like, crap that I still needed to deal with. And so that just started leveling me up. And then in late 2022, so about a year later.
Okay, what's happening with Carly at this time? Just like you're also in the Word, you're getting hungry. Are you guys communicating more?
I would say after that, we definitely took a different level in our relationship.
So Matthew, our youngest son, he was born in December 2019.
Yeah.
And so so for when Nathan was born, that was 2016.
Yeah.
He had become like a little bit more involved. So he definitely was a little bit more involved. Yeah. Mike had become a little more involved at home and stuff. And then by the time Matthew came around, I felt like we were actually starting to be a team.
Yeah.
Probably before that.
Wow.
Yeah.
What does that mean? What does that look like?
Just like actually caring about each other.
Yeah.
And like, hey, you need help doing this. And
like
even
each
like
other.
holding hands sometimes,
Like in public, at home.
I don't know, all of the above. And just actually,
you praying together?
Yeah, I would say we were more
I'd say a little bit. Yeah, probably a little
headed
bit.
in the right direction.
Yeah, like things were progressing away from hell.
So cool.
Oh, for sure.
Very
we were
well.
definitely healing. Like it.
Yeah,
definitely.
Well,
definitely
during that time, even before Matthew, though, you definitely dealt with some childhood stuff that you had realized had bubbled up and surfaced. And so I think dealing with and I still had crap to deal with, but by her dealing with some of the trauma and things like that she had kind of just swept under and kind of put away for a different day.
Yeah.
By her changing and her character changing, I definitely know that it reflected on me just changing because she was acting different. So it just kind of not enabled me, but it directed me to just act differently around her because I would still get mad about stuff, but she wouldn't react the same.
I was learning not to get triggered. Like I was learning.
And that would just de-escalate things like so much quicker.
Yeah. So my value, it's still something I'm working on in different areas. Right. But I had to remember my value was settled at the cross. And so remembering that, it's like anytime, and honestly, I would get triggered when my kids would say stuff to me or do stuff to me, and just the same. Like I was so insecure about my identity that would happen too. But
started changing.
And some of the things, like practically as a wife, I started getting convicted about, certain movies we were watching or things like that, like a long time ago, probably 10 years ago. And at first, and that was an important thing. And this is kind of what I give advice for, because sometimes women see things going on in the home spiritually before the men do, if they're dealing with a similar situation, which is, like it's not great, but it does happen a lot. And so instead of, I was learning not to nag at him or just condemn him for his choices.
Right.
But I did have to stand firm on what I believed God was saying for me. That, I can't. Also, I was
personal convictions.
Yeah, I was walking out of fear. And so little things that, it's not even, he wasn't watching horror movies even. It wasn't even like that. But just little things that, if he's watching a movie and
or like a suspense action thriller.
Yeah, if there was something like that, I was like, I'm sorry, I can't watch that. Because for me, I was walking out of intense fear, like intense torment with fear. And so that would trigger, and that was just because I hadn't gotten total deliverance. I was just managing things and also renewing my mind and stuff. So doing what I could with that. So anyway, but that actually helped because he was angry at first because he was so annoyed that I'd never watched.
This is life. This is what we do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or just felt like she didn't want to hang around me.
Right. And so
like this is
supposed to be our time to like snuggle and like have some popcorn and like chill.
Yeah.
And she's like, nah, I don't want, I can't.
I was like, I can't do that. I can't do that. And I was reading my Bible all the time and I was like, no, I have to be in the Word. I have to, because I was wrestling so much with myself. But it did, I think it did actually because I was learning not to nag about it or condemn you, but just leading by example, going after it, I think then that eventually that had a positive impact on you, hopefully.
Well, I think it did over time. Like it was kind of one of that like small snowball effect that turns into a snowman.
Isn't that crazy how powerful that is though? Like for better or worse, like it, the last 2 years for Tiana and I, the hardest 2 years by far of our marriage. And it snowballs both ways so fast into the negative, hellish area and into the beautiful, like just liking each other again and wanting to be around each other.
Yeah.
And it's like when you're in the negative snowball domino effect, it's like, man, there ain't no way out of this.
Yeah.
Could you guys point to a specific thing that happened in an encounter with the Lord, a deliverance? Or did it just kind of feel like baby steps and the Lord just kind of had you on a journey, planting seeds, growing them at this point?
With your marriage?
With everything. Your walk with the Lord, a desire for him, parenting, your marriage. Did you feel like it was like a one-time kind of shift? Or it's like, no, this is just
not even for me either. I would say it's those little moments of surrender and big moments of surrender. But really, it's surrender, getting on your knees and surrendering the areas of your life.
Well, and for me, it was humility, which God's still doing such a work in me with that. And it's so good. But it's like, that was one of the biggest things for me was anytime I would feel anger or something, I would like want to just there'd be times where I wouldn't be able to control it, I guess you could say.
Right.
But it was baby steps. Like I would say up until November of last year, it was baby steps.
Yeah.
Well, no, maybe still, Africa too was a big step.
Yeah.
For me individually, right? Yeah. Like I'm not but the individual me contributed to our marriage growth, and the individual her contributed to the marriage growth.
For sure.
What happened in Africa and how did that come about? Is that because you were starting to talk about that, right?
Yeah, I'll do the Coles Note version.
Pastor Lowe, you got to know.
Yeah, got to know Pastor Lowe. So 2022, the opportunity kind of presented itself through a good friend associated with Lowe's business, like ministry business. Well, that sounds so bad.
Spirit Ablaze.
And
did you go in 2023 though?
Yeah. So that's when the plan started, and I was like, hey, I think I need to go on this trip. And basically, Carly couldn't kick me out the door fast enough. She's like, you're going.
So actually, that was just to pause that, because it would have been 2022 on Christmas Eve that we lost our last baby. Almost halfway through our pregnancy.
No.
And then that was a very big, and we won't go into that, but it was a very big downhill spiral for me. It was I went into a really dark place. So when he actually was going, there were a lot of people that were like, are you sure he should leave you for this time? Because I was not good. I was not stable. I was not sleeping because I was being tormented at night and day.
We both kind of assumed that she would probably be a bit better, I guess, like be in a better place by the time I left.
Right.
But
I knew he needed to go, because I knew this was a huge step in our spiritual growth together and in his. And so even though it didn't make sense, like it did not make sense, it was scary for me as well. But I just was like, Lord, like he has to go.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was March of 2023 March 2023. And it was 17 days. And, we kind of knew going in, like we did some pre-team meetings of some culture stuff.
Right.
And
in South Africa, right?
Yeah. And our leader had gone a few times. So he brought us up to speed on a little bit of what we could expect, which ended up being a good thing. But during that time, I asked God before I left, I said, I need to know that you're undeniably real. I need to see it. Like, I don't want to feel it. I don't want to hear it. I want to see it.
Why were you asking that question? What was happening for you?
Because for me, I felt I had made some faith leaps, but I felt really plateaued. I'm like, it's like that. There's got to be more.
Right.
And so I said, I want more.
Yeah.
Because if you're this good as you say, I want to be all in. I don't want to just kind of be in.
Right.
And you got to be really careful what you ask God for. And it was basically like living Acts.
Right.
For 17 days.
Wow.
Like deliverances were every day. You know, the culture there is so entrenched in witchcraft and things like that. So it's, you really understand where you sit in your level of authority very, very quickly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Exposed.
Yeah. It's super exposed. Very vulnerable. Very like, oh man, I do not know as much as I should or I thought.
Wow.
But leading up to the trip, Lo had encouraged you guys to read through the Gospels, really study the Gospels.
Which I did.
And then, so that for you, I think was actually another big step for you digging into the Word.
Yeah.
Those few months. You went even further in. You were like, okay, I need to, because you knew you were going to be called to preach.
Well, because, right. And I was I ended up being the first one up. Yeah. But yeah, and for people that don't know, like Spirit Ablaze, like we don't go to build schools or churches or homes.
Villages.
We go to preach the gospel. We go to cast out demons, preach the gospel, baptize people, heal people.
Ooh, sounds like the Great Commission.
Yeah, weird, right?
Almost like something we're supposed to be doing.
Almost something, right? And so...
And you saw it all.
We saw it all. And there was a few defining moments. One was a gentleman in the first village outreach that we went to, like first village. He was just like a rack of bones, and he got backpacked in by a different guy because he couldn't walk, and like laid him down on a mat in the church. And we were sitting outside the church just in the shade because it was hot. And our leader's like, "Oh, get in there, got a job to do." And so,
but he's been paralyzed for 2 years.
Yeah, like he hasn't walked.
Wow.
And
so you guys were like, that's not like
deformed.
A headache.
His knees were all deformed. And so there was 3 of us there, and I was by his legs, and there's 2 guys, kind of one on each shoulder. And we started praying for him, kind of like, how do you have faith for this?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, this isn't some unseen, like, I got back pain. I think it's better, 70% better.
And so I don't even think we were 20 seconds into praying for this guy.
Yeah.
And the one guy was like, enough praying. And he just grabbed the guy by the hand and he said, in Jesus' name, you're going to walk. And he pulled the guy to his feet. And instantaneously, his entire frame straightened. Like his hips, his knees, his ankles.
Wow.
Everything straightened. And of course, like, everyone's quiet for like what felt like an eternity.
His ankles and everything, legs are
everything
all just
was
like,
perfect.
But they were just like
they were like all turned in.
No way.
And
did he gain weight?
So I'll get to that. So he started walking up and down the church aisle a bit, and we're still in like belief but disbelief, right?
Yeah.
Like, did I just really see this?
Yeah.
But looking at the faces of the locals is how you knew that this was actually happening, because they were shocked.
Wow.
Right? Because they knew the guy.
Oh yeah.
Right?
This don't happen.
So yeah, he like gets his healing. He had some stuff going on his chest. He got healed of that, swigged a whole 1.5 liters of one of our water bottles, and walked out of the church. And we're like, please come back for the evening service, right? Because there was another girl in the village that got instantly healed of malaria through our team as well. So that,
was there like cheering and shouting and like...
Not really, no. It was like everybody
they were like, the man of God's here. You did your job. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, like they came with such expectation that they weren't surprised at the result.
And meanwhile, the team,
they're like,
the Mazungus, the white people from Canada, are just in shock.
Well, and that's the thing is like, we actually shouldn't be in shock.
Yeah.
We should actually walk with the same expectation.
Come on.
Mm-hmm.
So he left. The girl and him walked back to church that night.
Yeah.
And like this guy's legs, when he got backpacked in, I could touch my fingers and thumbs around his thighs. When he came back to that church, I kid you not, he must have gained 60 to 70 pounds in a matter of 3 hours.
Wow.
Like,
and you're a kinesiologist,
so like from a scientific standpoint, it's physically impossible.
Yeah.
Full face, like cheeks were full, they weren't sunken in, like everything.
No.
And what the most amazing part of that is, as I got them both to sit down after the service, and I video recorded them giving their testimonies.
Yeah.
Through an interpreter, because I'm like, I have to bring this back to Canada. Like they have to give a first-hand account of what happened in their bodies during that period of time. So again,
do you have a picture of him? Like for later, I want to put it in the video. Can you send that to me?
And so that was that was probably one of the most defining moments for me.
That is insane, Mike. Isn't it interesting, just to pause on that? I've been to Africa a couple times too. Took a team over there, saw all the same things. But one was a 12-year-old girl who was paralyzed for life, never walked in her life.
Yeah.
We prayed for her. Nothing really seemed to happen immediately, a little bit, but we came back 3 days later and there's this girl doing front flips, back flips, jumping. And we're like, who's that? What's happening? And they're like, that's the girl you prayed for. It took 3 days for that miracle to unfold. And we actually left that village just being like, so bummed. But it's like it just like unfolded and the Lord brought healing. Well,
and that's the thing is so we got back from our village outreach because we had 2 teams split off, and then we got back together before coming home.
Yeah.
So we had a couple days to debrief with each other and just process everything that had happened. And my buddy from Saskatchewan texted me, and he knew why I was over there, and he kind of believes in a higher power type of thing, and. And he goes, so, like, how's it going over there for you, right? And I was just like, you're never going to convince me that God does not exist. And it was like, while I was typing that text, I realized that God did exactly what I asked him to do. Like, he showed up in the most undeniable way. Like he did all the impossible things that you can't be like, oh, well, this probably happened or that probably it was the most undeniable way. And I'm like, okay. And then I'll just wrap up with this so when I got home, besides it was a little bit tough for Carly and I for probably the next few months, because I came back just like, I was completely lit.
I didn't feel like it was tough for me at all. I'd been waiting for this.
Well, but a different man, kind of a different guy. It was different.
And the kids had to adjust to it too.
Yeah. Where's Mike? What'd you do with Mike?
Yeah.
What's wrong with Dad?
That first night.
So good.
Just jet lagged. Can't really sleep. I'm like laying there in bed. She's sleeping. And I'm like, I knew my plate was so full of just everything but God. Like I had going on. I'm like, okay, Lord, like I want to do more but you got to let me know what I need to clear off my plate. Like I got to make space.
Because you had kind of a hunting channel.
Yeah, I had
super
so
busy
much
with
stuff
that TV
going
show.
on, and work and everything.
Yeah.
I'm like, I have to create space. And like, oh man, it was within minutes. The Lord was like, you got to quit your hunting show and you got to sell the animals. I'm like,
but not the puppy dogs.
No.
But like,
not the kitty.
His horse though.
Yeah.
Right.
And I told the Lord, I was like, are you sure? I was like, I really love those things. And he goes, I know. I'm like, so that's what sacrifice is supposed to look like.
Wow. Like how bad do you want
in the morning, I told her, I'm like, God spoke to me last night and we're selling the animals and I'm quitting the hunting show. And she's like, we're selling the animals? I'm like, yep. And she's like,
that actually was probably a little bit hard.
It was
not
hard
the horses
for you.
for me because I wasn't doing anything.
Yeah,
with them, but
right.
the other ones.
But in that though, through that obedience though, like we made our money back on the animals plus more, and well, not in the feed, but like the cost of them.
Yeah.
And I was in contract with the hunting channel already, so I asked the Lord. I said, "Am I quitting now, or do I honor the contract?"
As in finish out the year.
Yeah. And I just felt the Lord be like, no, finish out the year, but just know you're done afterwards. I'm like, okay. And it was like the most peaceful hunting season I ever had. It wasn't the most successful, but it was so full of joy.
Oh man.
The kids were with me on so many of the hunts. And it was just like, so this is what it feels like to be obedient to the Lord.
I remember, man, the years prior to that, you just like looking and sounding so stressed out about the, getting the next show out and the content and getting out and getting an animal, et cetera, et cetera.
I've met some really cool people. Like, there's a lot of stuff about it. I think there's really good stuff there. And it wasn't like the hunting show itself was wrong or sinful.
Yeah.
But when I look back on it, and I was telling Carlos the other day, it's just like, the Lord actually didn't ask me to start a hunting show.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like he couldn't work through it.
Right. Yes.
But it wasn't what he had planned for me.
Yeah.
And now that I'm out of that, it's just like the space that cleared out, the stuff that Carly and I have been able to do in ministry as a team, which has again brought us closer together.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, it's like, I wouldn't want to go back to the hunting show at all.
What's happened since?
Well,
like for you guys spiritually, your marriage?
Yeah. So basically, like after he came back from Zambia, then that was the time when we really felt like, okay, we're doing this. And it was cool because God had given me some really neat dreams while he was gone.
Yeah.
Like prophetic dreams, just kind of showing different things of like what he was going to have us do and all that, which now we see things. And that's why we write our dreams down, because then it's like, 2 years later, you're like, oh, wow, that's what that was. But then we had this hurdle of where I was at. And so I was in such a dark place. I was being tormented, like so tormented.
Like basically it progressed after the last miscarriage.
Yeah. So I was tormented until, I guess this past December was when I really got freedom. But about a year ago was when I finally realized that I had lost some faith in God, some trust in God, because with the miscarriages, I had built up this expectation that if I was obedient to the Lord and if I sought him and I wasn't in sin, then I would stop having miscarriages. Like somehow it was dependent on my obedience. Not that he was causing them, but I had this belief. And so I had this expectation that, okay, we're going to deal with this and then I'm going to have healthy children.
Right.
And then it didn't happen, right? Wow. What I had expected. And it happened worse than ever. And so, I truly believe all those things are what the devil wants to do. Like that's not
steal.
Yeah, that's not God's work. But I, through that, had really accused God of not showing up for me. Yeah. And so I was really struggling to trust him. And so fear took over. So I had panic attacks daily, nightly. Wow. Like I was tormented. I had demonic dreams for like a year and a half. It was horrible. But I really was like, Lo was a spiritual dad to me so much during this time. And I'm someone who likes just the truth. I'm a truth speaker.
Yeah. Don't beat around the bush.
And I want to overcome things. So I think for me, all of this and overcoming things in my life and my walk with God has been in vulnerability. Yeah. In those moments when I've been not well, saying, I am actually doing horribly right now. Like this is what's going on. With the Lord in my prayer time and with other people around me. And that is what has helped me overcome. And so
cool. Yeah. Well, no, I just think we're almost out of time here. I want to ask you guys one more question. But I think like seeing you guys, like, of course you guys aren't perfect and the Lord's doing so much work and the Lord's, still bringing you guys through past pains and working through things and getting better at communication and stuff. But like the hunger that I see in you guys, like the spiritual hunger is just so cool. I think it was John Eldredge. He wrote the book Wild at Heart. Have you read that book, Mike?
Oh, nope.
He doesn't really read other than the Bible.
Oh, my brother. Yeah. I got to get this book for you. Good. Probably my top 3 books are all John Eldredge books. But he's also a counselor. And he says, when he's helping a married couple, he says, if there's not hunger and desire to fix their marriage, he will not work with them. He says, you cannot do anything if there's no hunger.
Yeah.
Like there has to be just like a desire, like no matter how messed up you are, how much the Lord needs to work on you, there has to be hunger. And it's like, there's just such deep hunger. And I know, Carly, you've been pursuing like, looking into a master's degree and moving more into that and into healing and deliverance ministry, both you guys. And Mike, right now you just kicked off a 8-week course, Project God-Man, started last night, Sunday, April 27.
Yep.
And you can join, by the way, for our listeners at any point over the next 8 weeks.
Yeah, it's in person this round.
Sunday night.
Yeah, I'm working on a digital like live stream type version for the next one.
So cool.
Yeah, so people from out of town can
Biblical manhood.
Yeah. Biblical masculinity.
8 p.m.
7 p.m.
7 p.m. Evangel Lobby Sunday night for the next 7 weeks.
Yeah.
So cool. I love that. You guys are involved in prayer ministry, host ministry, worship teams here at Evangel. Like, you've been just so honoring and so inspiring to Tiana and I, and so encouraging as young lead pastors here at Evangel. And we just admire that and honor that so much. I want to end with this. What would you say to somebody who has surrendered their life to the Lord? Surrendered their life to the Lord. And has maybe prayed a prayer, maybe been in the church their whole life. Maybe they're a young adult. Maybe they're 40. Maybe they're 60.
Yeah.
And there's just no flame. And there's no hunger. The flame's gone out. They've lost their first love. And they maybe just, go through the motions. Like I can, I think so many of us go through seasons like this too. But maybe somebody that's like in this season, but maybe has been in this season for 20 years.
Yeah.
And it just ain't changing. What would you say? Like, how do you find your first love again? Like, where would you start? What do you start with? What would you say if it could just be one tidbit?
I would say first too is like, I know you mentioned all the ministry stuff that we're doing, but I think that it's super important to note that our home is still our first ministry. And I mean, I know you know that. I just want the listeners also to to know that, because for us, it started in the home. For us, so good. Getting hunger for the Lord so that our kids could get the healing they needed from the trauma that we had caused, so that we could, restore our marriage, so that we could restore relationship with our kids, because we have had brokenness in relationship with our girls, especially. Right. And so we've seen the Lord just so faithful in that. But I would say to somebody is like, if you're a new believer or a longtime believer, I would say, I started studying the Gospels. Like, I got different colored highlighters out, and you don't have to do it my way, but I just wanted to really get a picture of what Jesus did when he was here on earth and what he commissioned us to do. And so I went with a highlighter, and I went through and highlighted all the times there was a healing, either him or the disciples did healed someone
in the Gospels.
Yeah. And every time someone was raised from the dead, or demons cast out, or things like that, and then just started studying that. But I mean, I would honestly say, and it doesn't stop there. Like, I'm loving getting into the rest of the Bible.
Right.
But I really think when we can get a good picture of the Gospels and who Jesus was on earth and what he's commissioned us to do, it's like there's more. Like, that can create a hunger for more. Like, there's more. And also, if you're just kind of stagnant in life, like, there's more. The intimacy with God, the relationship we have, like, even just being able to not just praying and just not hearing anything, but praying and hearing the voice of God.
Yeah. Right.
Like, that's huge.
Yeah.
Like, him, whether it's through pictures or like the way he's directed us in simple things and big things, has been absolutely phenomenal. And so there's more. There's deep intimacy with the Lord that's available, that is so beautiful and heals the deepest wounds. And you actually don't have to carry the baggage that you have. All of us have baggage from our lives. Like, no one is without that.
Right.
Yeah, and I'll just add quick
so
to that was like just based on like my personal journey, because I had a flame that was not like, it was barely a pilot light.
Yeah.
Right. For me, just because kind of like who I am, like as a teacher and stuff, and like I do have a desire to learn. I love learning.
Yeah.
Is discipleship. Like if you're not surrounding yourself with spirit-filled people,
get it.
You can't be surprised that you're not spirit-filled. Yeah. Like honestly, like sure you can have a Holy Spirit encounter. Like I'm not saying you can't just have like the Holy Spirit descend on you, but like Jesus had disciples.
Yeah.
Right? And so he valued discipleship. And so the thing for me was I was not surrounding myself. I was surrounding myself with lukewarm Christians, and I was lukewarm. As soon as I started surrounding myself with fire-filled Christians, like Pastor Lowe, like going to Africa, like that men's group, it wasn't an overnight thing for me.
Right. It's a new normal.
It started creating new thought patterns, renewing your mind, all those things. And so discipleship was so critical. Yeah. Because it's kind of like you are what you eat. Who you are is largely to do with who you hang out with. Wow. And you got to get out of the lukewarm water. Wow. Like you can't, in the spirit realm, when you understand spirituality is of a higher essence than the flesh. Yeah. There's no gray area. It's black and it's white. You can't have a drinking addiction and be fully on fire for the Lord. Like it would just like, I don't understand how that works. Right? If you're living in sin, knowing God hates sin, how can you be in the full relationship with him? Yeah. When he's just begging you to repent.
And it's as simple as the surrender. Like he will come. It's
the repenting, the surrendering, the reconciliation.
He will give the ability to change your life, but it's him. Like you were talking about that even too, right?
Yeah. That's so good.
Surround yourself with spirit-filled people, and God will just move. You'll have a greater real estate within you to move. Yeah, and you'll start to change.
And
love it.
And we're all looking for our purpose in life. Like we're all looking for like, what's my purpose? Like what's my role? And really, I think when you grasp the concept that Jesus actually commissioned us, then I felt like, oh, this is why I'm here. Like, cause all my life I was like, there's gotta be more than just going through the motions, and then death scared me then and all that. And now you realize, oh, there's a mission here to do with the Lord in intimacy with him, but there's a mission, there's people to reach, there's love to be shared and all this. So that,
love that. Love you guys. And thanks for sharing that. I just also want to say like, for you guys, our people listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Evangel Downtown Facebook and Instagram or YouTube, little plug there. See how I did that?
Yeah, smooth.
Like I would encourage you guys to reach out to Mike and or Carly and take them out for coffee. Pay for their coffee or lunch.
I mean, I'm pretty cheap. I just drink water, so
you can just take her out for water.
Take me out for water.
But pick their brains. Like it's just like what Mike's saying. Like you get around these people and you start to become more like them. Yeah. And I think a huge piece that's missing in our culture, we're such an individualistic culture, is we just generally don't really have spiritual parents as a culture. Yeah. Right. And even this last Sunday, I was just realizing like, man, I think I missed a point. There was a point, I won't say necessarily where, but where I just realized, oh, this person needs a spiritual parent. And how cool would it have been to be like, is there a spiritual mom out here right now in the crowd that wants to be a spiritual mom to this specific person? Mike, for our audio listeners, is highlighting Carly. But I just want to say, like, hit these people up, contact them, 1-800 the Friesens or whatever it is.
It's not our phone number.
Find them at Evangel, and take them out for lunch and pick their brains. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks, Jimmy.